Welcome the chosen ones. When they couldn't change your soul, they attempted to forge your signature. Let that sink in for a moment. Because what you're about to hear is more than just scandalous. It's diabolical. Imagine waking up one day to discover that someone had the audacity to fake your entire marriage, forge your name, and impersonate your very essence, all while you were out here minding your divine business, probably wondering why your love life has been unusually dry. Well, it was not dry. It was hijacked. Here is a disturbing truth. Every year, thousands of forged marriages are discovered worldwide, with many involving identity theft, occult rituals, and inheritance fraud. However, you have chosen one. This was spiritually engineered. They were not simply playing games. They were tampering with a divine timeline. Someone stood before a false altar, took your name, and wore your image, hoping to bind your fate without your permission. That is not just a scam. That is spiritual warfare. Wearing a tuxedo. Here's the kicker. They assumed you would never find out. But guess what? You just did. Secure your seatbelts. Because what we're about to discover isn't just shocking. It's a cosmic crime. Let's look at the twisted scheme that used a forged ring and a stolen signature to try to erase your divine future. And don't worry. I'll explain exactly how it backfired. Let me begin. Number one, they couldn't have you. So they created a clone to take control of you. They were unable to control you. So they made a knockoff version of you. This is how desperate they were. You were too spiritually grounded, too unpredictable, and too unconstrained by their manipulation techniques. So rather than trying to change you, they created a version of you that they could dominate, and it wasn't just about looks. They attempted to replicate your energy, essence, authority, and very name. That is how deep this went. They forged your signature not only to gain access to material items, but also to your spiritual identity. You see, a name in the physical realm is associated with access, authority, and inheritance contracts. However, your name has spiritual significance. So when they forged it, they weren't just taking away your legal rights. They were attempting to hijack your destiny. This wasn't simply fraud. It was a full-fledged identity theft operation involving layers of impersonation, deception, and ritualistic alignment. And the worst part is that they used to play you as the impostor. They were not chosen at random. They studied. You observed. You found someone who could mimic your appearance, posture, softness, and language. However, they didn't just want to look like you. They wanted to be you. They hoped no one would notice the swap, particularly you. But there's a reason why counterfeits never thrive. Because you can forge a name, a signature, and a wedding photo. But you can't fake essence. They could not replicate your divine glow. They couldn't capture the spiritual authority in your voice. And they couldn't wear your anointing without getting burned from the inside out. They did not do this because they loved you. They did so because they feared you. Your free will, clarity, and calling threatened their entire plan. They didn't simply want to trap you. They wanted to replace you while you were still living. They hoped you'd remain confused, silent, and delayed. They wanted to discredit you and keep you from telling your own story. But the truth has a voice. And no matter how long they try to silence it, it is speaking now. Everything that was previously hidden is being brought to light. And the world is about to discover that the real you was never the person they paraded around. The real you, unbought, undefeated, and unbothered, is on the rise. Number two, they did not create a marriage. They attempted to erase your divine assignment. They did not simply forge a marriage. They attempted to block a divine move. It wasn't just about faking a relationship. It involved tampering with something sacred. Marriage in the spiritual realm entails more than just two people joining together. It is a covenant, a doorway, and a union that enables purpose, legacy, power, and generational shifts. So when they forged a marriage in your name, they weren't simply deceitful. They were attempting to disrupt the heavenly alignment before it could even begin. They knew that if you ever connected with a person God truly intended for you, it would cause a ripple effect that would shake everything around you. The type of union you were meant for includes spiritual authority, healing, prosperity, and breakthrough. Not just for you, but for whole bloodlines. So, what did they do? They made certain to create a paper counterfeit of that connection. A deal. A spiritual blockage. They did not simply want to delay you. They intended to reroute you, rendering you unavailable in the spirit, untraceable in the physical, and unrecognizable to your divine counterpart. The forged marriage was a silent curse. It was designed to confuse the heavens, disrupt your timing, and slow down your journey. They wanted the heavens to see your name already joined, preventing your true partner from finding you in the spirit. They weren't just signatures. These were spiritual contracts formed with evil intentions. But here's the deal. What is divine cannot be permanently blocked by fraud. What God has written cannot be erased with a forged document. What? They didn't count on you to wake up. They didn't expect you to heal, gain clarity, and begin putting the pieces together. And now that you have, the whole lie is unraveling. They thought they were being smart. They assumed no one would check the paperwork, spiritual records, or energy signatures. But what they faked is now being revealed. And the true covenant, one containing power, love, and destiny, is on its way. Their forged union pales in comparison to the force that awaits you. What? God banded together. Separation cannot be achieved through fraud, ritual, or deception. Number 3. The impersonator was not a random person. They searched for a soul with a similar aura. The impersonator was not a random choice. They didn't just pick someone from the street to play your part. They studied you first, watching how you move, speak, and carry your energy. They analyzed your softness, silence, and strength. They knew you weren't easily duplicated. They searched for the closest match they could find. Not just in looks, but also in vibe. Someone who can wear your light just enough to pass inspection, but not enough to carry out your mission. This was a strategic move. They wanted someone who could capture your essence well enough to persuade those who didn't know you. Someone who can blend in, sign the papers, show up in your name, and possibly even mimic your mannerisms. Despite their best efforts, the impersonation fell flat because they overlooked one crucial detail. You are not merely a person. You have presence. You carry something spiritual that can't be faked. What's even more bizarre is that the person they used most likely had no idea what they were getting into. On the surface, it may have appeared to be an opportunity. Perhaps they were promised protection money or a position in an elite circle. However, their true purpose was far more sinister. They were assuming a stolen identity, and such acts always have spiritual consequences. That person became a living prop in a fabricated narrative designed to conceal your truth. They were taught to walk, talk, and move like you. But they couldn't be you. Because being yourself is something you don't learn. It's something you were born into and have lived for. The impersonator carried only your image. They never had your scars. They did not pay the price for your oil. As a result, the truth is beginning to emerge beneath the phony veneer. People are beginning to notice the difference. The vibe is off. The spirit is missing. The lie can no longer withstand the weight of the truth because the real you isn't just returning to the scene. You are about to reclaim everything that was stolen under your name. There's also the impostor. They're stuck playing a role they were never meant to play. Previously, this was about more than just control. It was about inheritance theft. They weren't simply trying to control your life. They were seeking your spiritual inheritance. What they did went well beyond manipulation. This was a calculated, ritual-level operation intended to intercept what was rightfully yours. They recognized something that most people overlook. Spiritual inheritance does not simply pass through blood. It progresses through covenants, unions, and divine alignment. Because they knew you were carrying something rare, ancient, and powerful, they formed a union in your name, hoping to legally and spiritually access blessings that were never intended for them. This wasn't just fraud. It was a forged covenant designed to tap into your spiritual DNA. They were aware that your name carried weight. They were aware that your lineage was not ordinary. They were aware that the promises associated with your life were not insignificant. Instead of fighting you openly, they forged your name into a fake union, hoping to redirect your flow of favor. Blessings and breakthroughs in their minds. If they could legally tie themselves or someone else to you, they would be able to inherit what you were destined to receive. However, they did not simply seek your blessings. They wanted to skip the process. They wanted your harvest without revealing your seeds, crown, crucifixion, oil, or suffering. So they attempted to cheat the system. Spiritually, it was a theft of legacy. They attempted to link your name to someone it was never meant to be associated with, in the hopes of unlocking the gates of favor, abundance, and spiritual protection. The scary part is that it did work for a while. Things came their way that were not intended for them. Doors opened that should never have opened. But here is the reality. What is stolen cannot be sustained. And now the energy has shifted. What was siphoned is returning. What was hijacked is now being untangled. What was forged is now exposed. Your inheritance was never up for grabs. It bears your spiritual fingerprint. They attempted to cheat their way in, but the system is now correcting itself. And what they attempted to steal is about to overwhelm them with consequences. Because spiritual theft does not require silence. It comes with divine repercussions. Number 5, you were signed off without your consent because you were considered property rather than a person. They did not see you as a living, breathing, thinking individual with a soul and a destiny. They saw you as property, something to be managed, rearranged, and manipulated to further their agenda. They forged your name. It wasn't just a legal offense. It was an outright declaration of how little they valued your humanity. In their opinion, you did not need to be asked. You did not deserve to be included. Your voice was unnecessary. Your presence was not required. Because they didn't consider you a person. You were an object. This was not about love, connection, or relationship. This was about ownership and control. They believed they had rights to your name, future, access, and blessings. And the worst part, they did not think twice about it. To forge someone's signature on something as sacred as a marriage deprives them of agency, reducing them to a tool, a means to an end. It wasn't personal for them. It was transactional, cold, and calculated in their mind. You were a locked vault, and they only needed the correct combination to access what was inside. It made no difference if it was spiritual favor, financial gain, legal benefits, or social positioning. You were an asset, not a beneficiary. That mindset is what makes it so dark. They didn't simply violate laws. They violated your dignity. They took your voice out of your own life story. And to make matters worse, they most likely convinced themselves that they had the right to do it, that you owed them something, that your life belonged to them because they played a role in your past. But the game is over. The blindfold is removed, and you are no longer the silent, invisible figure in the background of your own story. You're standing up, speaking out, and reclaiming your identity, voice, and autonomy. You aren't a resource. You are not property. You are not a pawn in anyone's plan. You are a divine being whose consent was unquestionable. Everything done without it is about to be exposed and reversed in public. Number 6, you were hidden in plain sight while they constructed a narrative without you. They did not need you to physically disappear. They only needed you to remain silent long enough for them to create a version of you that they could control. This is what made it so deceptive. You were right there, breathing, living, and existing. However, they pretended you weren't there while you were hiding in plain sight. They were out there creating a whole narrative around your name, energy, and story, but none of your truth. This wasn't all lies. It was all about strategic identity warfare. They interpreted your silence as permission. They mistook your absence for weakness as you were recovering, isolating, rebuilding, or simply unaware of what was happening. They were spreading false information about you, one that made them appear good, one that granted them control, one that stripped away your complexity and reduced your identity to whatever they needed at the time. They wore your image as a costume, only enough to fool outsiders. They used your name to gain access to space, sympathy, and resources. They told stories about you that were full of half-truths and distortions. The worst part was that they knew you couldn't defend yourself without appearing bitter, dramatic, or crazy. That's how elaborate the setup was. They made certain that any attempt to speak up would be interpreted as jealousy or delusion. This was not simply character assassination. This was a case of reputation theft. And it was effective until now, because something in the spiritual realm had changed. The truth is beginning to breathe again. People are beginning to question the narrative. The vibe doesn't add up. The mask is breaking, and your true voice, the one they tried to silence, is emerging. The version they created benefited their ego. It preserved their lives. It manipulated sympathy while concealing guilt. But the true you, the one with depth, scars, power, and a soul they couldn't erase. That version is resurfacing, and it is deconstructing every story based on impersonation. You're no longer hidden. And now that you're present, everything false must crumble. The seventh forged marriage was a cage disguised as commitment. This was not about love. It was a trap, plain and simple. They dressed it up as a commitment. However, the forged marriage was nothing more than a spiritual cage, a mechanism designed to keep you bound, stuck, and isolated from the outside world. It might have appeared that someone cared enough to commit to you, but underneath it all, there was strategic confinement. They knew exactly what they were doing. They married your name to a lie, hoping that it would follow you wherever you went. They weren't trying to build alongside you. They were attempting to prevent your real partner from finding you, block blessings from contacting you, block the legal and spiritual paths that were about to open in your favor. They didn't want the true you to flourish, so they linked your name to chaos, confusion, and contracts you never signed. By doing so, they left a trail of interference. Every time your name appeared in the spirit or in systems, it was entangled in a web of false agreements. So anyone sent to assist you, whether in love, career, or favor, would pause, hesitate, or turn away completely. Who wants to walk into confusion? That was the goal. Isolation. Not only is there physical isolation, but also spiritual and emotional abandonment. They wanted you to be unreachable. They wanted to disqualify you without telling you why. All the while, you wondered why connections didn't work, why doors kept closing, and why you felt invisible and unheard. They hoped you'd give up, that the delay would break you, and that loneliness would consume you. But they didn't count on your divine protection. They didn't expect God to expose the paperwork and burn the cage down from the inside because fake covenants don't hold up under divine scrutiny. The fog is lifting. The confusion has subsided, and what appeared to be a marriage is being revealed for what it was. Spiritual imprisonment disguised as a romantic lie. And you aren't just breaking free. You're becoming more in tune with reality. Finally, we see chosen and free. Number 8. Your absence was not coincidental. They designed it to complete the ritual. You were not absent by chance. You were deliberately excluded from the process. Your voice, presence, and consent were intentionally removed. They did not forget to include you. They did not make any legal errors. They planned your absence because they knew if you were present, the ritual would fail. This was not simply forgery. It was cult-level manipulation disguised as paperwork. Your signature was not just required to complete a contract. It was the spiritual seal of the unseen realm. A signature symbolizes energy, agreement, and power. It is a form of covenant. And they couldn't get your genuine consent because your spirit didn't agree with their deception. Instead, they copied, forged, and imitated it, attempting to replicate your yes, without ever hearing your voice. That was how far gone they were. They didn't simply want what you had. They wanted it without confronting you, honoring you, or including your will. What makes this so dark is that they didn't need you to leave physically. They simply needed you to be unaware. They needed you to be disconnected from your own power so that you would not notice what was going on behind your back. So they moved in silence, buried documents, signed papers in back rooms, whispered names during rituals, and attempted to bind your fate to a counterfeit arrangement. It was never about a relationship. This was about ritual capture, which involved binding your spirit to a contract via forged signature so that your blessings, energy, and divine access could be redirected. It's the same technique employed in spiritual manipulation circles. Bypass the will, hijack the agreement, and sign it with false consent. That is what happened here. But they forgot this. What is founded on lies cannot stand in divine light. And now that light is illuminating every aspect of the ritual, you are no longer unaware. You are no longer absent. The version of you they attempted to imprison is awakening, and every spiritual cord tied without your permission is snapping. You did not sign it. You did not agree to it. And now heaven has called the whole thing into question. Number 9. You were made into a ghost in your own life. They didn't simply steal your name. They attempted to erase your existence while keeping your identity alive in the background, like a puppet on invisible strings. You are being transformed into a ghost in your own life. Every forged document, every lie spoken in your voice, and every false signature signed in your name. It was all meant to make you disappear without dying. Not physically, but spiritually, socially, legally, and energetically. It was a covert assassination. Not with weapons, but with documents, false stories, and dark rituals. They did not want to harm your body. They wanted to erase your divine fingerprint, strip you of your essence, voice, and choices, reducing you to nothing more than a name passed around in spiritual and legal systems to open doors for others while you remain locked outside. You were alive. However, they were silenced. Present. However, it is often overlooked. Breathing. However, they are bound. This is what spiritual death looks like. They left your name on the altar, not to honor, but to deplete it, to use your energy as a power source while keeping you out of the loop. You fueled movements. You never signed up for financial rituals. You were never represented in places where you did not stand. This was not carelessness. It was an intentional design to ensure that if someone came looking for you, whether for divine connection, business opportunity, or breakthrough, they were met with a wall of confusion, red tape, forged contracts, or someone claiming to be you. The plan was simple. Bury the true you beneath layers of falsehood so deep that you would never be discovered again. But this is the part that changes everything. You are still here. You didn't disappear. Your soul refused to bow. Your voice is breaking through the fog, as is the divine fingerprint they attempted to erase. It is reactivating. Your identity isn't simply returning. It is roaring back with power. Every lie is being debunked. Each signature is being questioned. Every system that attempted to avoid you is being forced to confront the truth. You were never gone. You were just reintroduced by Divine Order Number 10. They knew who you were long before you did, and they attempted to alter your origin story. They knew who you were before you could articulate it, before you realized your own depth, and before you recognized your mission. They had already felt the weight of your spirit. You walked into rooms like a child, carrying a presence. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. And it scared them. Because even when you were unaware of your own power, your spiritual identity was already communicating. It was disturbing their shadows, challenging their false authority, and undermining their carefully crafted illusions. This was not a random act of betrayal or confusion. This was a deliberate and premeditated attempt to derail your destiny. They noticed your divine trajectory taking shape and decided to cut it off at the source. Instead of supporting your journey, they created a fictitious timeline that disconnected you from your true origins, confused your path, and rerouted your story through lies and forged agreements. You weren't simply impersonated. You were surgically targeted. They attempted to rewrite your beginning so that your future could be controlled. Because if they can rewrite your past, they can also confuse your future. They knew your true calling would open doors, reveal secrets, and shed light on dynamics that had been hidden for generations. So their goal was not only to take you, but also to keep you hidden from the rest of the world. That's why the attack was so precise. It was spiritual warfare masquerading as legal manipulation. Occult tactics disguised as real-world paperwork. Identity theft. Not just your name, but also your timeline, story, and legacy. They hoped that if they intervened early enough and forged the necessary things, the real you would never emerge. That you would spend your life confused, doubting, and disconnected from your true self. But their greatest error was assuming that your awakening could be stopped. It couldn't. And now you're beginning to remember. You are reclaiming your origin story as well as your future. And as you do so, every false narrative attempting to replace you crumbles under the weight of reality. They attempted to silence the chosen one before you could find your voice. You found it. And they're terrified again. The person who played you is now living under the curse that was intended for you. The person who thought they were clever enough to impersonate you is now consumed by the curse they thought they could avoid. That was the part they didn't see coming. They were not simply signing a name. They were inviting your warfare without your blessing. And this is a disaster waiting to happen. Spiritual laws are precise. They do not miss. They don't care if the signature was forged or the ritual was manipulated. Whoever takes on your role enters your battles, and without the divine covering designed for your soul, it becomes unbearable. They believed they were stealing a blessing. In fact, they were stealing your burdens. every test, trial, and spiritual fire that was intended to shape you into the person you are becoming. They are now forced to face it raw, unprotected, and unqualified. They imitated the crown but not the cross. And in the spirit world, that is theft, with a deadly price. When they impersonated you, they believed they were gaining Eve's favor. Invisibility. They didn't realize that every ounce of grace in your life was supported by your suffering, prayers, sacrifices, and divine alignment. They did not earn the oil. As a result, when the weight of the war dropped, they were crushed rather than elevated. And now they've tried to reroute the curse to you by forging that fake union, image, and role. It's reversing like a boomerang because you would never curse in the first place. You were being refined. However, in an attempt to avoid the fire, they walked into it headfirst, without divine permission. They attempted to hijack your life but ended up swallowing your shadow. Allow them to wear your light without gaining access to it. No. Allow them to sit on the false throne they built through fraud and deception. Because spiritual law does not reward ambition. It honors the truth. And the truth is that only the chosen can survive their chosen path. Anything else results in exposure, breakdown, and divine correction. And that is exactly what is happening right now. A number. This was a sacrificial swap attempt. But you were not the lamb. You were the lion. This was not simply a lie. It wasn't simply theft. This was a sacrificial swap attempt. A dark, calculated ritual designed to sacrifice you in the spirit realm so that they could walk away, blessed, protected, or elevated. They believed that by putting your name on cursed documents, fake contracts, and spiritual altars, they could shift the consequences onto your soul. That's how sick and twisted it was. But the part they couldn't predict, the unexpected twist, was that you weren't the lamb. You were the lion. You were not born to be quietly sacrificed for someone else's benefit. You were born to roar through the darkness that they believed would swallow you. They saw you as the weakest, most vulnerable, and disposable piece on their board. But they were completely wrong. You were the entire strategy. They never understood. They didn't simply want your name. They desired your spiritual covering. They sought your favor with God. They believed that if they presented you as the offering, heaven would not notice that they were sneaking into blessings using your identity while transferring their curses to you. This is the type of spiritual fraud they committed. Trying to feed your life force into their rituals, hoping to buy them time or favor. But instead of consuming you, those rituals have backfired. Because when someone attempts to sacrifice a chosen one, the altar transforms into a judgment seat. The fire does not consume the lion. It exposes wolves in sheep's clothing. And that is exactly what is happening right now. Everything they set against you and sent out with your name attached is now fueling the fire of your rise. You were not sacrificed. You were activated. Every attack honed you. Every betrayal sharpened you. And every counterfeit covenant turned into a courtroom in the spirit realm where heaven ruled in your favor. They are now watching in disbelief as the person they thought they had offered up becomes the one calling for justice. Because lions don't die quietly. They rise, roar, and reclaim what was never theirs to give up. God allowed it to happen. As a result, the courts of heaven may issue a judgment that no one can overturn. God did not miss it. He did not sleep through it. He witnessed every forged document, impersonation, and secret meeting held in your name but without your presence. And while it felt like abandonment and broke your heart that no one intervened in the moment, he allowed it to happen. Not because he didn't care, but because the spiritual court required evidence from the realm of heaven. God is more than just a comforter. He is a judge, and just as a courtroom requires proof before a verdict is rendered, the courts of heaven required undeniable evidence to issue an eternally binding judgment. If God had stopped it too soon, it would have just been a rumor. But now it's documented. It's a spiritual record. The case is closed. They did something wicked. Yes. However, it was also what granted heaven the authority to publicly strip them without delay or appeal. You see, when someone dares to use God's name and conceal his chosen identity, they enter a realm of divine justice that no earthly court can match. And because you endured it and did not respond in the way they expected, heaven was able to construct a case so strong that no force in hell could overcome it. God is about to restore you in a loud and dramatic manner. It will not be discussed in whispers. It will be loud and legal. It will be global. Because of the lies they told, the schemes they devised, and the stage they set up to humiliate you, God is turning it into your platform. They built it with the assumption that you would never recover. Instead, it is becoming a pulpit from which your vindication will be heard for generations. This is eternal justice, not simply emotional healing. And when God rules in your favor, it does more than just clear your name. It rewrites the entire story. No more hiding, explaining, or defending yourself. The judgment has already been issued in heaven, and it is about to be felt on earth. The people who played judge, jury, and executioner in your life are about to see God overturn everything they thought was final. A number. Your genuine union will end generational curses. They tried to stay alive. They did not simply forge a marriage to steal your blessings. They did it to postpone your destiny because they knew what your true union was capable of. They knew that once you aligned with your divinely assigned partner, something cosmic would happen. Their forged union was more than just deception. It was a desperate attempt to keep together a generational system of bondage, confusion, and spiritual enslavement that your true love story would completely destroy. Your true union threatens everything they have built on lies. Why? Because it's not only romantic. It is revolutionary. When two chosen ones meet in divine timing, the connection becomes a spiritual earthquake. The kind of love they tried to prevent in your life has the power to break curses, shatter inherited trauma, and disrupt the rituals that have kept families trapped in silent suffering for generations. That kind of union endangers empires based on secrecy and manipulation. They understood that if they could fake your union, they could postpone the healing and clarity that would naturally follow your genuine one. Because your counterpart was created not only to love you, but also to empower you. And together, your divine assignment would have revealed the very roots of the cycles they needed to conceal in order to maintain their power. But this is something they couldn't stop. Divine timing. Your true counterpart is drawn to you through spiritual gravity rather than force. And when you meet, the energy shift will extend far beyond your relationship. It will reverberate through bloodlines, shatter altars built in your family's name, and demolish entire spiritual infrastructures that rely on your disconnection. They feared your love because they knew it brought deliverance. They feared your union because it meant the end of their power. The very system they attempted to uphold by forging a covenant in your name is now collapsing under the weight of your genuine one. Your love will become a war cry. The prophecy will be fulfilled through your union. And every curse they attempted to keep will crumble in the light of a love story. They could not produce, manipulate, or survive. What they did to you was not an error. It was a coordinated spiritual crime motivated by fear of oneself and terror of one's future self. They forged documents, impersonated your essence, and attempted to seal your fate behind false unions and stolen names, all in order to rewrite your history and intercept your inheritance. But the irony is breathtaking. In their desperate attempt to conceal your truth, they proved it. Their lies testify to your power and fear. Make your divine identity known louder than any spotlight ever could. They thought you were just a name to be exploited, but you were actually a divine blueprint sent to disrupt generational bonds and collapse deception networks. And now, everything they built to keep you in check is being used as evidence against them. The very schemes that were supposed to destroy you have become evidence that heaven is using to vindicate you. And your story does not end tragically. It ends with divine reversal. You are not coming back quietly. The courts of heaven are reintroducing you, legally restored, spiritually fortified, and visible to the entire world. Your real name is being reestablished. Your true union is drawing closer. And every altar, system, and counterfeit structure built during your absence is being demolished, not by your hands, but by the roar of your arrival. God didn't simply save your life. He has preserved your legacy. He allowed the exposure to create a case so strong and complete that no one on earth or in the spirit could overturn it. You're not simply surviving what they did. You are rising in full authority, armed with the truth and crowned with the very justice they sought to avoid. Let this be a warning to all impostors. You cannot steal the chosen's destiny. You can impersonate the name, but you can't withstand the calling. What was supposed to be your grave has become your stage, and what was forged in darkness is now propelling you into unstoppable light. So rise, selected one. Your voice is back. Your name is cleared. Your story is no longer under siege. It is divinely authored, and the next chapter is about recompense as well as redemption. With interest, your role will be remembered for generations. Hold up. The Chosen One. Don't scroll away as if this were just another video. Did you feel that in your spirit? That was not just content. It was confirmation. That was divine. Intelligence directly from the throne room, tailored to your timeline. And it's too powerful to keep to oneself. So here's what you should do, and do it as if your breakthrough depends on it, because it very well might. Subscribe to the channel now. Not tomorrow. Not when I recall. Now press that button as if you were slamming the gavel in the courts of heaven. Because this is your space. This is your sanctuary. This is where the truth meets fire. Like this video with holy boldness. Let the algorithm know that we're not playing small anymore. Every light informs the system that the chosen ones have entered the chat. Leave a comment below, and I mean something powerful. Say they forged it, but God reversed it, or heaven ruled in my favor. If you're claiming this word for your life, let your digital footprint speak. Share this with someone who has no idea what has been done behind their back. Someone who has been subjected to spiritual attack but lacks the language to express it. Send it to your best friend, cousin, prayer partner, or even that quiet auntie who always knows when things aren't right. Finally, stay locked in. Because if you thought it was greasy, oh, baby, we're just getting started. What happens next will shake foundations, so don't just watch. Join the movement, ride the wave, and walk with the Chosen's fireproof favor. Tell them you're not the one to forge, fake, or forget. You are the one God has been sitting up in silence. He's about to say it loudly. God bless you.